Everyone, and welcome to Build Your Own Workout Beginners Edition. My name is Caitlin Hennessy, and I'm the program coordinator at Global Connections. Thank you all so much for coming this evening. This is an interactive webinar, so please feel free to use the chat box at any point if you have questions for the presenter, any technical difficulties. I'll do my best to help you, or if you have anything to add to the conversation. The presenter will mostly be answering the questions at the end of the presentation. However, you can put them in the chat box at any time and we'll make sure they get answered. I'm going to turn it over to Ramon Sodano and we'll see you soon.
So, hi everyone. Like Caitlin said, my name is Ramon Sodano. I am the coordinator for fitness services at Washington State University's Student Recreation Center. So what that means is I oversee the personal training and weight room departments, and I also oversee Wellbeing Online, which many of you Global Campus students have been able to come into contact with through a bunch of the resources that we offer. Today we're going to be presenting a workshop or webinar called Build Your Own Workout Beginners Edition, and this is something that's really it's asked of me a lot. I've been a personal trainer and strength coach for the last 10 years. Friends, family, clients, just people I meet that find out what I do always ask me, like, what's the easiest way to build your own workout? And these things can be very complex and all over the place with all the bells and whistles, and they really don't need to be. And when we get into this, we're not going to go super crazy and everything, but we're going to get some good idea of some basic terminology, some just basic concepts that definitely need to be understood to be able to help you develop your own program. We're going to be doing a little bit of a paradigm shift, and I believe it's more important to discuss certain aspects when building your program that are definitely more applicable to training in a safe and like productive manner that will be sustainable in the long run. It's something that's very simple that many coaches don't talk about that often, but it's going to be one of the main backbones to our program development. Within this webinar too, I have provided each one of you with a very, very versatile template that I have developed. It's a 4-day split that you'll be able to build your own program from very, very, very easily. And we will utilize that together, and I'll show you how to use it, and we'll get to that here towards the end of our webinar, and that's something that you all will be able to have. There is a large exercise bank in it, and I have been in the process of hyperlinking every single exercise in that exercise bank to a video of quality exercises, and I'd say about 2/3 of the way done, and we will be able to upload this webinar along with documents that are pertinent to it to our Global Connections website, where you'll be able to access it at that time. Regardless with how it is, you'd still be able to use it. You just might not know what some of the exercises are, but for the most part, all of them are in there, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So again, I'm Ramon, been doing this for a long time. My life has been developed around strength and conditioning and personal training, and now I get to oversee all those individuals and help develop them. And honestly, building programs and building workouts is like that's where us coaches nerd out. Like, I talked about the bells and whistles and all the crazy nuances that you can do with it. Like, that's where I'm at right now, and it's very fun to do. But honestly, what you get today is literally all you'll ever need. So with that, what we'll be doing, we have a little bit of an agenda. We'll first go over basic terminology, because to understand anything with building a program or what to do or what means what, you need to understand some just basic lingo of strength and conditioning and just fitness in general. A lot of the terms you probably have already heard, but we'll just go over them again. Then we'll go over types of resistance training exercises. This is just for the fact that there's a lot of interchangeable words that people will say that mean two different things, and I'll be able to kind of like settle those away so it's not too confusing. You'll understand what I mean when I say certain things, and then it'll also help you when you're in a different context and they say a certain or a certain word for something. You'll know that it means this and not that because you're in that context. We'll go over general training principles, we'll go over some of the very basic ones, and especially one that's called progressive overload or overload in general. That's going to be an important one to you for the development of programs after we put one together today, and for you to be able to continue to get results from whatever it is that you're seeking. Overload is honestly just we'll get into it in a little bit actually. Then we'll talk about load protocols. That deals with how much weight and reps and rest one should be utilizing with a certain rep scheme or whatever that may be. And then we'll get into key concepts to building a program. Those are kind of where I was talking about, where I want some of this paradigm to shift to, and what I find is very simple but very important to incorporate into your programs. Then I'll pull up that template that I've created for you all, and you can watch me work on it. I'm going to explain how it works, what this means here, how this is sequenced, what's the timing like, so you all have a good understanding of that. And again, this video will be recorded and put up to our Global Connections website, so you'll be able to get this information again if you forget something. After that, we'll have a chance for questions, and yeah, again, like Caitlin said, if you need to put your questions in the chat box, we'll definitely get to those at the end. All right, so I'm so used to asking, is there any questions, but nobody's here in the room with me, so let's just move on. So we're going to start with basic terminology, and I apologize, it's going to be a little bit of a death by PowerPoint for a little bit, but we'll be all right. So the first thing that we all need to understand is what reps are. So reps, as it says, they're short for repetitions. Repetitions define the number of times you perform a certain exercise. So an example would be if I was doing a barbell back squat and I did it 12 times, I would have done it 12 reps, okay? So however many times I do that given exercise is the amount of reps that I do. Now, sets refers to how many times you will repeat a given exercise for a set number of times or a set number of repetitions. So if I did 12 back squats, I rested, I did 12 back squats again, I rested, and I did 12 back squats again. I have now done 3 sets of 12, okay? So each one of those 12 exercises is encompassed in my one set. So it's very important to understand what sets and reps are. So sets are the overall, like what encompasses all the reps essentially, okay? Rest and active rest. So rest is pretty simple, right? This is the amount of time that you're resting in between an exercise. Say if you're doing a bench press and you wanted to rest for 60 seconds in between because you were doing some sort of strength training style that calls for a 60-second rest. Your rest is just what's in between. Again, there's different ways you can do this. You can have a superset, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, which is 2 exercises together. So you do exercise 1 and exercise 2, and then you rest, okay? So that's what your rest is. We need to talk about active rest because the program that we're going to be able to develop utilizes active rest. Active rest is a way to make your program the most bang for your buck, okay? It's a way for you to be able to keep moving in a small amount of time and get more done than is what usually happens in a small amount of time. Not only that, active rest can be utilized for multiple different things. So usually when you're doing active rest, it's going to be a certain activity that is not stressing the same movement or the same muscles that are being given that are being used in the main workout, right? So if my workout was a superset of bench and bent over rows, I could possibly do a plank for a minute for my active rest. And your active rest doesn't need to be the entire duration of your rest. Say I had a 2-minute rest, I could do a 45-second plank and then still rest and do nothing for a minute and 15 seconds, okay? Active rest is also good for implementing certain mobility or flexibility or stability exercises that maybe you're a little bit deficient in. If you know that you are deficient in a certain movement pattern or something like that, this is a great time to implement some sort of corrective exercise to help reestablish a certain movement pattern, all right? So it can be used to get the heart rate up a little bit more, or it can just be used to, that you need to fix your shoulder mobility. So while you're in between your bench press or whatever that you're doing some sort of PVZ pipe lat stretch or a bandage stretch, or you're doing some sort of exercise like that. A lot of other active rest exercises that we use are going to be like your rotary stability exercises, or what we call today's core. I'll say when you hear core exercises, everyone thinks of abs and stuff like that. Well, when we get to our exercise terminal or our exercise types of exercises, you'll see that when strength coaches say core exercises, they mean something else. But again, like I said at the beginning, that's going to be within the context of where we're at. But yes, very often active rest exercises is going to be like your rotary stability, anti-extension, anti-rotation exercises. Okay, moving on to load and intensity. So load usually refers to the weight on the bar, and intensity is interchangeable with that. So a high intense weight training workout would be someone that's doing a very heavy weight for a limited amount of reps. Okay, so that's a highly intense workout. Intensity also refers to heart rate. And like, for instance, if I was doing interval training where I was really peaking my heart rate at a very high period of time, and then I was resting for a little period of time and I was peaking my heart rate up again, that would be a very high intense exercise, very high intense cardiovascular or honestly anaerobic exercise. And then if I wanted to, have a lower intensity, that's your typical steady state cardio where I went on a 30-minute jog, right? I wasn't going at a higher intensity, so my heart rate was lower. So just know that intensity can also be utilized within your weight training workouts. And when it's high intensity, that means we have a very heavy amount of weight. So volume, the simple definition of volume is how much work you do, such as the number of reps you perform in an exercise. So these are two good examples. So if you were doing 5 reps of a deadlift and then you increased it to 10 reps, this would mean that you've increased the volume of your workout. However, if you did 5 reps of deadlift and then increased the weight and then did 5 more reps, you did not increase the volume, but rather the intensity. So the overall volume was not increased, but the intensity was increased. And that would also then correlate. We're not going to talk about work and stuff, but that would increase the overall work, all right? But your volume is the total amount of movements that you have done throughout a workout. Cool. Moving on, we got some more basic terminology. So we're going to talk about just a couple types of exercise schemes that we have out there that are very popular and that people use a lot. And the reason I want to talk about them is they're going to be used in the program that I'm going to bring up later when we get into that. So a very common phrase that you'll hear is people doing a superset. So a superset involves 2 exercises that are opposing one another. You have an agonist to an antagonist muscle. So it'd be like me doing a bench press and then a bent over row. So a push and a pull. So it's 2 exercises that are done sequentially that are opposing muscle groups. Okay. So it's like I do bench, I do row, and now I rest. Or I do bench, I do row, and I do an active recovery or active rest that isn't either one of those muscle groups and or movements. So a compound set, this is when 2 exercises are done in a row that are stressing the same muscle or the same movement. So it's like me doing a bench press and a cable fly, or me doing a bench press and then a push-up. So it's 2 exercises in a row that's stressing the same movement or the muscle. So this strength pair thing that I have here, I'm really more looking for just a pair. And the reason that I talk about this is in my programs, I pair exercises all the time that aren't necessarily a superset or a compound set. It's just 2 exercises back to back to, get the most bang for my buck. You'll hear me say that a lot. So I'm going to be able to get the most I can within a workout. And it could be something like a bench press and a squat or something like that, or a squat and a pull-up, which really aren't 2 opposing muscle groups, right? And I call it a strength pair because typically I'll do an exercise that's focused on a rep scheme of muscular strength with another exercise that's focused on the training muscular hypertrophy. We'll get into those terms here in a little bit, what's the difference between strength, power, hypertrophy, and endurance before we get into the program, honestly, but we'll talk about what those are and it'll make more sense at that time. But again, this pair or strength pair is 2 exercises that aren't necessarily the same movement or stressing the same muscle, or that are opposing movements that are done back to back. A tricep, this is 3 exercises performed one right after another. So I go bench, lunge, pull up, or something like that. It's just 3 exercises in a row. A lot of time, like when you see my strength pair in my program, you'll see that there's an active rest with it. I don't consider the active rest part of the pair or the tricep. So if I did a tricep and I had an active rest, I wouldn't consider it a circuit because you see circuits are more than 3 exercises. I consider my active rest part of my rest period. So yeah, triceps are 3 exercises performed in a row. Circuits is just more than 3 exercises performed in a row. Finally, so this 1RM, this is an important concept to understand just because if you ever start dabbling with other programs or you start learning about percentages and stuff, you need to understand what the 1 rep max is. So 1RM stands for 1 rep max, and this is the most amount of weight that an individual can perform for a given movement. A 1 rep max can be done for power and explosive exercises as well as done for strength exercises. But that's pretty much the ones that you're going to be doing it for. You're not going to be doing it for assistance-based exercises. We don't need to know the 1 rep max for those. But and again, we'll see the difference between power and strength here in a little bit. But this is used to 1 rep max, that is used to identify the amount of weight one should use for a desired outcome. So certain ways to train the body, like we talked about training muscular strength and muscular hypertrophy, they call for a different percentage of 1 rep max. So if I wanted to train in a muscular strength foundation, I want to be using 85% or more of my 1 rep max, and usually 6 reps or less. And we'll see a graphic of that here in a little bit. So there's certain percentages that come with a certain rep scheme that come also with a certain rest scheme for the body to be able to produce the most optimal output from that. And this is dealing with certain energy systems that are being taxed when doing these exercises, we don't need to get in the depth of these energy systems. A lot of times when people create these build a program or how to build your own program workouts, they really, really stress these energy systems. For you to get a quality program and get results that you want, you don't necessarily need to know all that. No, it's not nonsense. It's very interesting, but you don't need to know all those nuances. So this is one of the areas that's very important to me. If you came to our very first, well, not our, but my very first webinar as the coordinator here, I did a thing called the Train Smart, the 7 Principles of Movement. So when I'm talking about basic movement terminology, I'm talking about these 6 dominant movements that the body goes through, and then we'll talk about rotary stability at the end. So these are the movements that the body is dominantly going to go through when you are doing some sort of workout or doing everyday tasks. So we have vertical pressing. So this is where I am pressing something up and over my head, a dumbbell shoulder press, a push jerk, or a military press. This is where I literally have some sort of resistance in my hands and I push it up over my head and away from myself, okay? Vertical pull now is where I'm pulling myself up to something, okay? Or even pulling myself something down to me, like a lat pull or a pull up or a neutral grip pull up or a muscle up. These things are considered vertical pulls. Horizontal pressing, this is when you are pushing weight away from your body, or pushing your body away from something. It's like a bench press or a push up. It's any type of like horizontal press where the resistance is caused in a horizontal fashion. So again, your dumbbell chest press, your push-ups, your bench presses, all those kinds of things. And now we have also our horizontal presses, okay? Or I mean our horizontal pulls. Horizontal pulls are going to be things, again, that you're pulling to the body, your cable row, your dumbbell row, your barbell row, those kinds of things. So we also need to talk about hip dominant and knee dominant exercises. So hip dominant exercises are hip hinging exercises. Examples of these are like your deadlift, your kettlebell, Romanian deadlift, good mornings, glute bridges. What's happening in a hip hinge is that we're causing flexion at the hips and minimal flexion at the knees. So a hip hinge and a squat are different. A deadlift should not look like a squat. Most of the movement should be rotation at the hip and not at the hips, and not flexion or bending of the knees, okay? And then it's vice versa with your knee dominant exercises. We're getting a lot of like flexion at the knees and minimal flexion at the hips, okay? But regardless, in each one of those exercises, you get a little bit of a hip hinge in the knee dominant and you get a little bit of a knee flex in the hip dominant, or you know what I mean, right? So there's a little bit of both, but one is dominant the other. So rotary stability, this is what is today's core. People talk about abs and doing core exercises. Again, us strength coaches refer to different exercises that we'll see on the next slide to core exercises. When we think of training the abs and the stability of the spine, we think of rotary stability. And we think of these in the signs of anti-extension and anti-rotation, okay? And the fact of the matter where this has come from is in recent years, we've identified that all this rotation and flexion and extension that's happening at the lumbar spine, L1 to L5, so your lower back, though that's not meant to twist and flex and bend. That's a stability unit. That's a stability joint. And we want that to stay as stable as possible. And we want to train the musculature around it to keep that as sturdy as possible, that low back. We want it to be able to maintain that neutral position that's in, or that slightly nordic curve that it's in, but we want to protect it. And when we do all these things like V-ups and sit-ups and like these hyperextended sit-ups that are going from our lumbar spine going into flexion and then into extension, it's really bad for our lumbar spine. So we are able to figure out ways to still, and granted, those exercises are going to get you great abs, right? I did it for years, but my back, I used to get back pumps making my bed. I tell that story all the time. I would literally throw the sheets and the blankets on my bed, and my entire low back would just lock up and would just be bad because I was training and such. Not just with my core, other things are going on too, but this was a huge deal with it. But instead of putting our body into rotation or into extension, we're able to resist against it. So an example of an anti-extension exercise is planks, right? Where we have our elbows on the ground, we have a nice straight spine, and we're resisting for our back to extend. Like, when you see someone really push their chest up, we're resisting against that extension. And we're doing anti-rotation. This is like where we have bands against the wall, and we push the band, like they're lateral to us, okay? They're to the side of us. And I am standing, I push the band out in front of me, and the band's trying to turn me to the right, but I resist against it, so I'm doing anti-rotation. Those are very, very, very applicable ways to properly train your to your core, okay? And that's because your core muscles are not just the superficial ones that create the abs. It's not just your rectus abdominis and all those beautiful musculature. It's your multifidus, it's your psoas, it's all the things of the inner trunk, even in like, you know, in your pelvis, that's going to help stabilize all that. And then I didn't put it on here, but you'll see when we get to the practice section that other ways that we train rotary stability is through crawling and carrying exercises. And these are really just dynamic versions of anti-extension and anti-rotation. So it's like if I'm doing a bear crawl and I'm doing a bear crawl correctly, it's a very, very dynamic anti-extension and anti-rotation exercise for the spine. Because a good proper bear crawl, your butt's not wide up in the air. You're literally in a quadruped position with your knees about an inch from the ground, and you slowly move across. So you really, you're dynamically moving while also working in an anti-extension, anti-rotation way. That's just a big kind of like soapbox that we have in the business here. And I'm not saying give up all your ab exercises that you've been doing. If you do them here and there, like, it's not going to kill you. But if you're completely killing your abs over and over and over again with a bunch of flexion and extension, it may lead to back problems down the road. So now I've been talking about this whole what we call core exercises in the business, right? In all honesty, I'm not gonna lie, I use both terms interchangeably. And when I talk about core exercises, I'm maybe talking about, you know, the rotary stability exercises. And when I'm talking about core exercises, I'm maybe talking about these. For the most part, I'll tell you in a second. So all resistant exercises can be classified as either core or assistance exercises based on the extent of joint involvement in the exercise and the size of the muscles recruited. So when strength coaches talk about core exercises, we're talking about core exercises that meet two criteria. One, they have to involve movement at two or more primary joints. So for instance, a squat is a core exercise because I'm getting joint movement at my knees and at my hips. It's a multi-joint exercise. Okay, and the second criteria is they need to recruit one or more large muscle group. So it needs to recruit the glutes, the quads, the pecs, the back, the lats, big muscle groups. Okay, so assistance exercises, these are used to maintain muscular balance across joints, help prevent injury, rehabilitate rehabilitate a previous injury, and isolate specific muscle groups. Before going on, just know that core exercises can be used to rehabilitate previous injuries as well, because a push-up is a great rehabilitation exercise, and that's a core exercise. It's multi-joint and stressing a big muscle, right? But assistant exercises have to meet two criteria. So they're single joint. They only involve joint movement at one joint, and they recruit smaller groups like the biceps or the triceps. So you think of like a bicep curl or a tricep extension, that's a single joint assistance exercise. How you will hear me talk about these things is when I refer to core exercises, I call them multi-joint exercises. That's usually when I'm talking about core exercises. But I break them down into a explosive power core or explosive or power multi-joint exercise, or a strength-based multi-joint exercise. And I know I've been harping on a little bit, and again, we'll talk about the differences in power and strength in a second. And it's important to know that because when you structure your program, which we will talk about structure here in a second, it needs to be in a certain way that definitely it starts with the core exercises and then ends with the assistant exercises. But within that, it needs to start with the multi-joint explosive power exercises, then go to strength exercises, then go to your assistance exercises, which would then focus on hypertrophy, and then, you know, endurance at the end. But we'll get more into the nuances of how you would organize those things. But just understand that when most coaches talk about core exercises, we're talking about big multi-joint exercises and not your abs, okay? So some general training principles, there's tons of training principles, but these are some of the main ones to get across, okay? Specificity. So I don't know if you've ever heard the SAID principle. The SAID principle is specific adaptations to imposed demands. This means if I want to get better at something, I need to train in a way that's going to enhance the muscles, the movements, the mechanics, the mobility, the stability of said performance or the exercise. The simplest way to put it is if I want to get bigger chest muscles, I got to work my chest muscles. However, if I want to be like a really good track sprinter, I need to work not only my quads, my glutes, my calves, my legs, and but I need to do the movement too. I need to sprint. I need to hit hill sprints. I need to do strides. I need to create proper like arm strides and things like that. So specificity is training in a way that is going to enhance the performance that you are trying to enhance. And a lot of you, it's your idea of enhancing something is on aesthetics, so it's also enhancing the aesthetics of what you want to do. Like if you want to get bigger arms, you got to work your arms. So all specificity says is specific adaptations happen to the demands that we impose on it. So if I work my biceps, I'm going to get big biceps. But if I want a big chest and I only work my biceps, I'm not going to get the big chest. Okay. So specificity, train in a way that's going to pertain to your end goal. Overload. Okay, so there's many ways to do overload. We're going to talk essentially about progressive overload in a little bit. So overload is a training stress or intensity greater than what the person or the body is used to. So all training programs will yield benefits for a little while, but if you will hit plateaus is what it's called, right? If you do not experience overload. So overload can be experienced by changing the weight lifted. You could increase it, decrease it. You could do more workouts in a week. You could do less workouts in a week. You do increase or decrease sets of reps. You could increase or decrease the rest periods. You increase the complexity of exercise and so on and so forth. And these things change throughout a cycle of a workout depending on what you're trying to do, right? There's multiple times like where, okay, well, I'm doing moderate weight and I have a moderate rest period and I have moderate sets, but now I want to do heavier weight, more sets, less reps, and a longer rest period because I want to get stronger and now I want to get more powerful. So I'm even doing the same thing there. So there's different ways that you can overload yourself. And in the program that I gave you, that I'm going to give you, there's multiple ways to do this. And a great way to do it for beginners is just going from less complex exercises to more complex exercises, okay? And in the document that I'm going to provide with you, each exercise area has a drop-down list of a ton of exercises. At the top of that list is the most, like if you have the whole sheet in front of you, at the top of it is going to be the least complex of those exercises, and at the very bottom is going to be the most complex. And again, still working on getting that completely done for y'all. We'll talk about overload more when we're in the program itself. So choice and type are essentially the same thing. So exercise selection is influenced by specificity. So time, equipment, and experience. So the most important factor here is doing the exercises correctly when you perform them. A lot of the exercises I have in this program you will never have heard of. That's why I'm hyperlinking all of them, because they're quality exercises. The typical things that people are doing at gyms is usually counterintuitive to how the body moves and how the body actually works. So I created an exercise bank that utilizes exercises that are much more functionally based, okay? And they still get you strong and fast and mobile, but they make you feel good, and and there's easy checks that you can have with them to make sure that you're doing them right. Regardless, seeing these videos, with some of them I put longer videos in that where they give tutorials, but for the most part I try giving short little clips so you just see the exercise. Make sure, if you're uncomfortable with it, to find a trainer or find somebody that knows what they're talking about to be able to kind of help guide you through that. Because there's usually some little idiosyncrasies to certain exercises that make them as good as they are and as safe as they can be. So exercise order, we kind of talked about this a little bit ago. Exercise order refers to placing the exercises in a specific sequence within a resistance training program. One guideline for exercise arrangement is to start with power/explosive exercises, which are followed then by strength-based multi-joint exercises, and ends with assistance and single joint exercises. This is effective because both power exercises require more effort, skill, and focus than strength-based multi-joint or single joint exercises. And they stress the central nervous system a little bit more. Another way to think about this, and this will make more sense when we get into this terminology a little bit more, is that we start with exercises that focus on power, followed by strength, followed then by hypertrophy, and then ending with endurance. And you'll see, I believe it's in the next slide, that we're going to talk about load protocols, which I'm right. Cool. So load and intensity protocols, we'll first kind of go over these concepts, and then I'll talk about what you see down here in the table. So load and intensity protocols, especially when you're making your own program, is determined based upon what your goals are. Do you want to get stronger, more powerful? Do I want to get bigger and more muscles and cut, or do I want to be able to have really high endurance? And honestly, the program that I give you guys encompasses all of these, okay? You don't just need to focus on one, especially if you're going to build a program that's going to be sustainable and you consistently change up. You do progressive overload and change different aspects of it. You can have all three of these things in your program and, increase each one of them incrementally and smallly over time. If you are a strength and power focused athlete, then you should change up your program and have it be much more focused that way, and then just do a little bit of stuff at the end. of like hypertrophy and endurance stuff, but you should definitely focus on what your sport is. But for the main part, for most of us, and especially for a beginner's edition to this building a program, we can do all these within a workout. And don't think that power workouts have to be like a snatch or a clean. You can get it done with like medicine balls or with kettlebells and stuff as well. And even just your own body, you can increase power, because power has to deal with the speed of the movement, you know, the speed and the force to cause it. And again, we'll talk about that here in a second. So often a goal of athletes interested, so muscular strength and power is often a goal of athletes interested in improving performance. Strength and power loads are much heavier and should be reserved for those with resistance training experience. Power exercises are particularly complex and focus more on the speed and explosiveness than strength. Strength is absolute strength and can be like you've seen people deadlift as much as they can. It takes them like 10 seconds to get up and down. However, when you see somebody snatch or clean, the maximum amount of weight that they utilize, that thing's up and above their head really quick. And we have like examples of that coming up. Muscular hypertrophy, this is when the individual comes up to you and I want to be yoked, I want to be cut, I want to, like, you know, the bodybuilder, right? That's hypertrophy, okay? Hypertrophy is increasing the cross-sectional area of the muscle, which then makes it bigger, okay, and more sculpted, if you will. Muscular endurance, these are the outcome of this style of training is greater in muscular endurance and enhanced ability of targeted muscles at submaximal loads. Okay, so doing things for a high repetition and training that muscle to be able to take a lot of repetitions. So now if we go look at this graphic that we have at the bottom, okay, we have the modalities, and then we have muscular strength, we have power, we have hypertrophy, we have endurance. Across the top, we have the load percentage that pertains to each one of these goals, the goal repetition that pertains to each one of these goals, the sets, and the rest that pertains to each one. And you'll see as we go through these, they're different to be able to enhance or elicit the best outcome for trying to develop that goal, whether it be strength, hypertrophy, power, or muscular endurance. Okay, so that's why it's good to understand this whole one rep max percentage. And again, with our programs, you don't necessarily need to know it, but you start to figure it out over time. Anyways, if one is trying to train muscular strength, NSCA is going to tell you that you need to be training with weights that are equal to or above 85% of your one rep max for that exercise. So if my max on back squat is 315, to get the best possible outcomes to develop my strength, I should use loads no less than 85% with at most 6 reps. Okay, so when I go down to 5 reps, maybe I get to 87%. When I go down to 4 reps, I'm up to 88, whatever it is. I mean, there's lists out there that show exactly how many reps should be at what percentage. Again, it's impossible, just like nutrition, right? Guidelines aren't for everyone. You find where you're at. But 85% of your one rep max at no more than 6 repetitions is good for muscular strength development. And then we see that we have 2 to 6 reps that they can be done for. If I'm doing 2 to 3 sets, I'm usually looking at that 6 rep period. If I get to like 5 reps, I'm going down 5 by 5s, 5 by 3s, things like that. And you see that you have the rest period of 2 to 5 minutes. Again, so you have the span of time, right? So usually when you just get started, you'll probably rest for that 5 minutes and then bring it down to 4 minutes, and so on and so forth, the better and better that you get. Okay, in our power section, you see that there is a single effort event and a multiple effort event. It's because when we talk about power, we typically think of athletes, okay? And the easiest way to explain how to, and don't think that only athletes should be doing power exercises. Everyone should be, because everyone decreases their power over time. And that limits the speed that we're able to react at certain things. This is why so many older individuals get broken hips and things like that, because they fall, right? And they're not able to catch themselves. They lose that speed and explosiveness. So it's something that we still need to train. And older populations can do it with different exercises. It does not have to be a snatch or a clean or a push jerk, okay? But to think about the differences of how you develop a power exercise, a single effort event, we think of the shot putter, okay? The individual has one big heaving throw, or she, that they do, okay? This individual, and anybody can train power like this, but it's still, that individual is going to be using 80 to 90% of their max for only 1 to 2 repetitions, okay? And they're going to be doing 3 to 5 sets. If you're usually doing 2 repetitions or 3 repetitions, you're doing around 5 sets. And this person's going to have 2 to 5 minutes of rest, and they're going to take a good amount of that rest because they need to make sure that they have some good technique coming in. A multiple effort event for a power athlete would be like a 100-meter sprinter, or even a 400-meter sprint, right? They are a powerful athlete, right? And they're doing they're doing multiple things in a row at max effort, especially a 100-meter sprinter, right? So they utilize 75 to 85% of the 1 rep max. And again, that's because when they do these exercises, they create the same amount of force by moving the bar faster. And we're really looking for that speed and that explosiveness with these exercises. They're going to be utilizing 3 to 5 reps more, 3 to 5 sets, and a 2 to 5 minute again rest period. Once we get down to hypertrophy, this is when we're going to be doing, much more moderate reps. In all honesty, I always tell people if they're going to do hypertrophy, they can get 8 to 12. And honestly, even 15 gets up there. It just depends on how long you've been training for. So, again, just each his own. But for these exercises to increase that cross-sectional area, you really want to break down the muscle and help build it back up. So we want to really damage it at first. And again, this is just like anything. You break it a little bit, it comes back stronger. You don't want to overtrain, though. That's when it doesn't come back as strong. But these individuals are using 67 to about 85% of their 1 rep max, a 6 to 12 repetition range, sets of 3 to 6. I'm a big fan of the 3x8 to 12 and 30 to 90-second rest. So you can be getting huffing and puffing when you're doing these things. Muscular endurance, we're less than 67%, at least 12 reps, usually a little bit more, 2 to 3 sets with less than 30 seconds rest. So this is a good graphic to have and a good thing to remember. If you ever do build your own program from scratch, this is important to take into consideration. In the program that I've developed for you guys, I have I have not put set and rep schemes in there, but I put notes in there for like what the rep scheme should be if you're trying to work X, Y, or Z. And then in certain sections, like in the power section, you're allowed to go up to 5 reps, but in like the strength and in the hypertrophy and endurance sections, you're only allowed to go up to 3 sets, and that's just so it can all fit on one sheet of paper and stuff like that. Okay, moving on. So this is the videos I wanted to show you all to explain the difference between power and strength. Okay, so power is defined as the ability to generate as much force as fast as possible. Power requires strength and speed to develop force quickly. The load or resistance must be heavy enough to allow for maximal force to be applied, but not so heavy that exercise is performed too slowly. The exercise that this individual is going to be doing, she would not be able to do if she was doing it slowly. All power and explosive exercises are multi-joint exercises. Now we come over here to strength. Strength is the amount of force a muscle or a group of muscles can exert against an external load. Speed of the movement is not important when testing strength. All strength exercises will be performed using multi-joint exercises. So let's just first take a look at this. She's going to be performing a snatch. And what I really want you to look at is look at the speed of her feet. Like she's going to go there's 3 pulls in a snatch. The first pull is from the ground to the mid-thigh, and that's going to be a little bit slower. The second pull is from the mid-thigh up to her hips, where she's going to aggressively throw the bar forward into her hips and up vertically over her head. And the third pull is actually when she's accelerating the body downward underneath the bar. So not only does this person have to extend the hips as fast as possible, but they immediately have to retract and come underneath the bars. And she's got 3 beautiful snatches in her. And we'll even watch it in super slow motion. So we see that she gets under that bar, and she's throwing some weight around. She's getting there quick. So she's kind of slow, quick, and under that bar, fast. She is explosive. She is powerful. And here she comes again. I legitimately can't do this weight. So now it's going to show you each 3 of these in slow motion. So we see her going from the first pull. So that's from the ground to mid-thigh. And you'll see that she gets to a certain position called the scoop when she's in her second pull. So we're still in first pull. She's going to start extending at the waist. Now we're getting right to about second pull now. Comes, makes contact with the hips. You'll see her feet actually come off the ground. She's not jumping. She's just lifting her feet and repositioning herself underneath the bar as fast as possible. And boom, she comes underneath, snaps right underneath. There's a lot going on in a very, very fast motion. So that, and again, this is an extreme example of a power exercise, okay? Again, a kettlebell snatch, a kettlebell swing, a kettlebell clean, like a tall kneeling medicine ball pass against the wall can be an explosive exercise because, again, it's focusing on that speed. All right. So now we'll watch some exercises that are focused on strength. So this individual is a power lifter, and he's going to be max. I think we're just going to watch, we'll just watch his squat. The first one he's just getting ready to go. So he kind of, the speed is a little bit faster than, doing max strength, but he's getting ready. So it's pretty funny because the easy one's 738 pounds. So you'll see he moves a little bit slower, but the second rep definitely, the second attempt that he does is definitely much more indicative of what strength is. But we'll still watch them both. It's just crazy to believe that 738 pounds is that easy for somebody. Still a little bit slower, right? He's not aggressively throwing the hips forward to get underneath the bar or anything like that. But here comes his, damn near 800 pounds. And we'll see that to be able to recruit that entire, because he's recruiting multiple muscle groups right now, right? In the other one, she's using body mechanics. She's using physics to her advantage, right? This is brute strength right here. Pushes through, right? So much slower than what we're seeing Maddie Rogers doing. And then he's gonna hit that 826. I'm not sure if he hits it. I can't remember. The guy's an animal, though. Right? So much slower. Okay. So these kind of illustrate the difference between power and strength. And it's just something that a lot of people don't understand. They ask me, like, well, why doesn't strength come before power? Why doesn't power, what is it? Well, why are they even different? They're both joint exercises. So those are both multi-joint exercises, but they're calling on different, they're calling on different mechanics to work, essentially, right? That girl, Maddie Rogers, is using physics. She's using the physics of the bar in her body to be able to throw that weight around, okay? So I just thought that was a good visual representation of what I talk about between power and strength. And my first time ever embedding videos into a PowerPoint. I'm pretty proud of myself. Okay, gotta click back here. Cool. All right. So we're on to key concepts to building a program. Okay. So first things first, warm up. Okay. Later on in the school year, I'm going to be giving another webinar on like an all-encompassing warm up. Right. Warm ups, essentially at the barest level, are just meant to increase your core temperature and increase your body to get the body warm, okay? If you don't know a lot of crazy things about warm-up, then just like go on a bike, do whatever you need to do for like 10 to 15 minutes, get on the first climber, get on the rower, get on the assault bike, do something like that to warm your body up before you go into it. You'll see over here I have like a section for foam rolling and dynamic mobility and dynamic running and band activation. If you know these kinds of things, definitely do those, especially if you know how to foam roll a little bit and do some like, walking knee tucks and quad reaches and like, single leg RDLs and things like that. And then if you're doing your high knees and your skips and stuff like that. There's multiple different ways that you can do warm-ups, and again, I'll be teaching a lesson on that. And this is a different version of the thing that I'm going to be giving you guys here in a little bit. I changed up what we do a little bit. In the finished version, what I'll do when we upload it is I have a colleague who actually has some videos of warm-ups that he does at his gym, and I'll just put them in there because it's nicer than most videos that you'll see, because each video I uploaded is just like one exercise, but he'll have like a whole sequence of things, and I'll put those in there so you can utilize those if you want to. And then definitely come to our webinar later on in the semester about how to complete an all-encompassing warm-up. So exercise order, warm up first, definitely. Then we're going to go to our power exercises. We see that I have explosive lifts located right here, okay? And it's actually, well, we'll talk about, it's paired with a corrective or active rest. Okay, but we do the power exercises first, the core multi-joint complex exercises. Again, these are the most CNS fatiguing, demands the most techniques. This includes plyometrics like depth jumps and box jumps and things like that, and true agility stuff. So like if you're an athlete and you like to do L drills, or other cone drills like your 5-10-5 shuttle, any other drills like that, W drills, those things can actually be incorporated as explosive exercises. And honestly, if you are an athlete and you are doing some sort of speed and agility, that stuff should come before the explosive lifts. But don't do too many of them, or else you're going to be way too fatigued. You wouldn't do gassers and stuff before it, though. You wouldn't be doing like your 60-yard shuttle. No, you'd be doing that down here. Then we go into our strength-based section. I actually changed this to a strength and hypertrophy-based section. And you see that I have the knee-dominant double leg exercises and the vertical pulling exercises in there. And again, with an active rest. But we'll probably, when we're building them, we'll probably do this first one as a strength-based exercise, and this one as like a hypertrophy-based exercise, or you could flop it, or you could do them both hypertrophy, or you could do them, I wouldn't do them both strength. If you were going to do one strength, I would just focus on one being strength, and I would usually have it be the first one, okay? And again, in this section, especially the explosive section, my bad, I kind of moved on. You want the least amount of reps with the least reps and longest rest, and usually even more sets. So you'll see that you have the ability to do 5 reps here, but I mean 5 sets, but you only have the ability to do 3 sets here. And this will all make a lot more sense when we're actually playing with the template itself. So then, yeah, we move on to that strength hypertrophy strength pair. So this will be just a pair of exercises right here. It means you'll go exercise 1, exercise 2, active rest, and then rest. And I changed your guys' rest to 90 seconds to kind of refer back to what we were talking about a little bit more. We put this together, or I put this together for my personal trainers to be able to get done in an hour period of time. So literally, if you do all this and you do it perfectly in time, you'll be done in an hour, which is crazy. It's a good amount of work that you can get done in an hour. And again, these can be strength pairs can be paired at times, or a strength exercise can be paired at times. Again, I'd probably do a strength. That's why I changed it to strength and hypertrophy. Do a strength exercise with a hypertrophy exercise. Moderate reps and moderate rest for this section. Again, as you see that you have 60 seconds of rest here and then 60 seconds of rest here. Then we go to this hypertrophy and endurance section. I don't know why it says strength and hypertrophy right there. That's a typo. So this is dominantly assistant exercises, but it still can be some multi-joint exercises. You could throw some push-ups in there. You could throw some pull-ups in there. You could do, other exercises that are a little multi-joint, but they're going to be much higher reps, okay? And it's going to be much less weight. Okay, these can be circuit focused, and this can be higher reps. Okay, so you see in this section, you go exercise 1, 2, 3, rest. 1, 2, 3, rest. 1, 2, 3, rest. Here would be 1, 2, 3. So the superset or the pair, and then the active rest, rest. The pair, the active rest, and the rest. The pair, the active rest, and the rest. And an explosive exercise is the explosive side exercise paired with an active recovery and then rest. Explosive exercise paired with active recovery and rest. And again, we'll get back to this when we're actually on the sheet. It'll make a lot of sense. And I think we're doing all right now. This little bottom part is called a finisher. I've left that open for you guys to do whatever you want. Typically, you do some sort of interval training set or some sort of metabolic conditioning, like an AMRAP, an EMOM, or something right there. We've had previous webinars on take your workout anywhere, or like workouts on the go. I talked about EMOMs and AMRAPs if you're interested in learning about those. But an interval that you could do down here, say, you get on the erg rower. You could go 30 seconds on as hard as you could for 30 seconds off for like 5 to 8 minutes. You get on a Versa Climber and do Versa Climber 30 seconds on to a minute off. You could sprint for 30 seconds and then rest for 90 seconds. That's a 1 to 3 ratio. So when I use those finishers, it's usually like some sort of interval exercise or some sort of Tabata or metabolic conditioning. If you are trying to do some bodybuilding or get big and get yoked, you could do your typical like a bunch of curl drop sets or something like that there as well. But I prefer to do some anaerobic threshold training. But it again, this is build your own program, and it's very versatile. So this is where I'm trying to change the paradigm. Okay, so a lot of people, when they think about building the programs, they're like, I need to get stronger. I need to put them in this fashion. I need to make sure to go from power to endurance and X, Y, and Z. So those are things that people always focus on. I need to know the percentages. I need to know undulating periodization. I need to know linear periodization. You don't need to know all that crap. Okay. If you are able to balance your program so you do not build yourself asymmetrically, you are doing better than 90% of the people in the weight room, because they're just throwing weight around because they think they just move stuff. It's okay. What happens typically is when somebody goes to the gym is they're what we call anterior sagittal man. So they look in the mirror and they work all the muscles that they see in the mirror. They work nothing in the back, and they do everything in the sagittal plane. They're doing curls, they're doing presses, they're doing like front raises, they're doing everything in the sagittal plane, and they're doing everything on the front side of the body, and they do not balance anything. So that's when you see people get big chests, or you'll see people that have big rounded shoulders. They'll be like hip dominant, right? Where they have a big butt and a big arch in their back. They're not building themselves symmetrically, and we want to do that. It has been shown that if the body is functioning symmetrically, that we're a lot less apt to occur an injury, whether that's in training or just in life, right? You don't want to be compensating with your body with certain muscles that are compensating for underdeveloped muscles. It's something that happens all the time. There's this term that we call building strength on top of dysfunction. Okay, we do not want to build strength on top of dysfunction. So there's a very easy algorithm to make sure that that doesn't happen, and that's called programming for imbalances and programming symmetrically, okay? So what that means is we talked about the vertical pull, the vertical push, the horizontal pull, the horizontal push, the hip dominant, the knee dominant. We talked about that stuff earlier. All this means is that I have an equal amount. So for a week period of time, see, we have day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. For a week period of time, I have an equal amount of vertical pulling exercises to vertical pressing exercises. So as much dumbbell press as pull up, right? As much horizontal pulling exercises to horizontal pressing exercises, as much dumbbell rows to as much dumbbell press, right? We want an equal amount of those. And I want as much hip dominant exercises, as much deadlifts to knee dominant exercises to my squats. Those things should be paired. So lucky for you, in the program that I developed for you, the whole week long is going to be balanced, because if you see in these sections, you see it says knee dominant double leg, vertical pull. So these will all be drop down lists of certain exercises that fit that modality, okay? And they're equaled out across the week. And some might be like 4 to 3 or 5 to 4. That's not that big of a deal, okay? It's ideal to have them like 1 to 1, but if it's a little bit off, then it's not huge. At least you're still doing both sides. But it's definitely, when you think about it, it would be better to have 5 pull to 4 press, because everyone presses nonstop. It's usually like 8 press to like 2 pull or something like that, right? But 1 to 1's great. If it's 4 to 1, if it's 4 to 5, you know, whatever, like you're gonna do all right. But just be conscious of this. Program yourself symmetrically, okay? And the program I'm giving you is going to do it for you. Then I also take into account the rotary stability and or today's core. So equal amount of anti-extension to anti-rotation, and an equal amount of crawl to carry, okay? I said this is less important than the first 6 because I don't care. Just get any rotary stability in. But if you want to be, and again, the program I developed for you gives you certain notes to do certain things. But you be conscious of it. But if you just do rotary stability exercises, you should be okay. Okay, so, and we've talked about what active rest is. I don't need to hammer it away again, and I've even shown you already where it is in these workouts. But again, you know, active rest is it needs to not stress what is currently being worked, whether that's that movement or that muscle or whatever it is, okay? It just needs not to stress that, and it's doing something else. It can be rotary stability or core focused, right? It can be mobility focused, corrective focused. You'll see that in this area, these drop down lists, I have that says SM corrective. That stands for shoulder mobility corrective. There's a thing out there called the functional movement screen, which takes into account certain movement patterns that can get deficient in human beings, and they have certain corrective exercises that help reestablish those movement patterns. And throughout the week, I have the 4 different correctives for FMS strategies in there. And honestly, like, use those because I will. There's not videos for those ones yet, but I will put videos for those in there. Make sure to do those correctives and those active rests in there, because even if you don't know what it's doing, everybody needs to work on their shoulder mobility. Everybody needs to work on their active straight leg raise stuff. It wouldn't be too bad if people started focusing on some trunk stability push-up stuff, and it wouldn't be very bad if people were focusing on some rotary stability stuff as well. And those are the 4 in each one of the explosive sections. I put corrective for one of those movements in there. If you were an individual that did understand where your deficient patterns is at, that's where you would throw correctives in your active recovery section to help reestablish that pattern. Or say if you were, you know, contraindicated to do vertical pressing, you would take a vertical pressing exercise out and then put a corrective in there for it. But we don't need to get into that right now. Just know that when you see these in your drop down list, do them. They're good. They're definitely good for you. Again, most bang for your buck. You'll hear me say it all the time. Okay, so this is our last slide before we're gonna practice on our Excel sheet. So if you want to get that up real quick, I'll be bringing it up here too. And honestly, you probably just watch me for a little bit as we're doing stuff. So getting started, it's very important to identify what your goal is. Do you want to gain weight? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to increase performance for a sport? Are you trying to get stronger, faster, leaner? Are you trying to increase general fitness? Are you just trying to learn certain exercises? Are you trying to learn how to do a little bit? Identify what your goal is, because that's going to help you structure your program. Okay? And then identify where your training status lies. We have this little thing down here. Okay, so how long have you trained for? And this helps you identify how many days a week you should be training. If you're a beginner and you've never trained at all, probably about a frequency of 2 to 3 times per week is okay. If you've been training for about 2 to 6 months, 3 to 4 times a week is all right. In advance, you know, if you've been training for longer than a year, 4 to 7 times, I would say, you know, 4 or 5 with maybe active recovery would be just okay. So Again, if you're a complete beginner in this and you see that the program I'm about to bring up is a 4-day split, I will give you a little trick of how you can utilize a 4-day program to be able to be a 2-day-a-week program so you don't overstep your boundaries right away. But this is a good little figure to have to understand where you lie so you don't overdo yourself. It's important to get rest, everyone. It is extremely important to get rest. And then finally, what's your weekly schedule like? How many days per week can you, commit to training? How much time per session can you commit? Is it an hour? Is it an hour and 15? Is it 2 hours? What is it? And then I didn't write this stuff down, but just developing little tricks for yourself to make sure that you get to the gym. So you're going to have this program that you've created. Then is the gym out of the way on the way home? Can you get a gym membership where you have to pass your gym? Can you get your gym bag in your car before you go to work so you don't go home and then sit down and have like some, just have some food and like, well, I'm not going to go now. Have that, that bag in the car to make sure that you're ready to go. Okay, so let us practice. Here's our 4-day-a-week program. We have, you can put, my bad, I've created this for trainers, so they usually have the trainer name up there. You can just ignore that. But we have day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. So a 4-day-a-week program, okay? We have the warm-up section. And again, you see that I have 2 different warm-ups that go on each one of these days. What I'll do, like I said, when we upload this, I'll put some of my colleagues' warm-up stuff in there so it makes sense. Again, if you can just bike for 10 minutes, run for get on a Versa climber or like a erg rower. Those are great ways to warm up too. Okay, but if you know some of this mobility stuff, it's very important to incorporate it. All right. So again, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. We'll just focus on day 1 right now to be able to explain how to put this together. So if I was going to do a workout and I wanted to develop all this together, I have my phase 1, which is my power section. Okay. Phase 2, which is my strength hypertrophy section. And phase 3, this should be called a hypertrophy and endurance section. I apologize. What I will do is, okay, I don't know any exercises, but I really want to train. So we have a cool little drop-down list here for you guys. So here is a bunch of explosive exercises, right? And you implement any of those exercises. And just like I said earlier, the ones that are at the very top are the least complex, and the ones at the very bottom, like your snatch and stuff like that, are going to be the more complex, okay? So say I wanted to do, let's throw a kettlebell something in there. I wanted to do a kettlebell snatch, okay? So I have been taught that, working in power and explosive, I need to do a certain amount of reps, but I can't remember what it is. Well, if you go to this little this rep section, you'll see, oh, Ramon said to train in power, he needs to do 1 to 5 reps. Okay, so I included the multiple event athlete and the single event. So I would say honestly 3 to 5 for the most of you in here would be good. And you see that the most amount of sets I can have is 5, right? Because I only have 5 little areas where I can write my weight, right? When you print this out, this is where you write your weight of what you're doing. So, okay, I want to do 3 sets of 5. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm doing 3 sets of 5 kettlebell snatch. Now, my active rest is going to pair it with some shoulder mobility corrective. And I'll get these videos and stuff in there. I'll show you how you can access the videos and stuff too. So I want to pair with the shoulder mobility corrective. I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to do scap slides. Okay. So I'm going to do a set of 5 followed by 60 seconds of scap slides, then followed by 3 minutes of rest post active rest. That's what that AR stands for. And you can even bring this down to like 2 minutes if you wanted to, just depending on where you're at. I wouldn't go below 2 minutes though. So again, this is the exercise. Here's the huge list of them. Put the exercise in there, put a proper rep range in there, and then again, no more than 5 sets because that's what you're allowed to do up in this program. Again, when you build your own, you can do it however you want, but you don't want to be going more than, I believe, 6 sets for power exercises. I wouldn't go more than 5 sets of 3, honestly. Or 5, yeah, 5 by 5 is like some of my favorites, but that's getting a little closer to strength. So exercise, active rest, rest post active rest. Okay, and if I was doing a 45-pound kettlebell, and you can print these out, and it actually prints out on one sheet of paper, all 4-day split. And I'd write down I did 45, then I did 50, and then I jumped up to 60. But the 60 was real hard, so in my note section, I'll write 60 pounds was really hard. Go down next week. Right, and again, I'm not going to be typing this because I'm going to have this on the floor, right? So I'd probably hand write that in there. Again, if you have a tablet or something or an iPad, you could take this out on the floor with you and do it like that as well. Okay, so there's a note section, there's a set section, there's a rep section, there's a place to put your weight, and you got rest. It's all right there for you, okay? So then after I complete the 3 sets of 5 kettlebell snatches for my power phase, I'm gonna go down to phase 2. So again, it's gotta be these 3, I gotta do these 3 sets before moving on to this section, okay? So now I have a strength hypertrophy pair along with an active rest. Oh, just to clear things up for all you guys, this type section, this is something I used before where I had like dumbbell, kettlebell, barbell, hex bar, TRX. What I'm doing for you guys is in your entire list, I'm just saying if it's a kettlebell or a dumbbell or something like that. So just make sure that you don't have to use that section because the exercises themselves will be in here, okay? So just ignore it. Then again, I go down to my hypertrophy, my strength hypertrophy set. Again, this is a knee dominant exercise, okay? So we want to balance out. So I have knee dominant here, and then I have some hip dominant here. I even divide it into hip dominant single leg, hip dominant double leg, or knee dominant double leg, knee dominant single leg, right? So it's even broken down like that. But just knee dom to hip dom is equal across the board. So I'm gonna do back squats, okay? And I'm gonna go down and I find back squat, and I'm gonna do it with some sort of vertical pull. You know what? I'm just gonna do it with a lat pull, okay? And then you see here in this core section, I'm pairing with 60 seconds of a core exercise, and I even put in this little note that's gonna be a crawl focus. So we'll scroll down and we'll find something like bear crawls or something like that. So we're gonna do some sort of crawl, okay? So we go exercise 1, exercise 2, 60 seconds of the core exercise, which is going to be bear crawls, and then 90 seconds of rest post-exercise. So our sets in this section is going to be, we can't go more than 3, right? And our reps, we see that for rep range 3 to 6 for strength and 6 to 12 for hypertrophy. And so let's say we want to do 3 sets. So because we're doing, it's all encompassing, they're back to back, right? So 3 sets of the pair, and then I'm going to do 6 reps of back squat, and I'm going to do 10 reps of lat pull. Again, I put the weight in here and then my notes in here, okay? And again, so exercise 1, exercise 2, active recovery, rest after active recovery. Same thing goes for this tricep section. Again, we got knee dominant single leg now, so I want to go in there, do the drop down list. I'm going to do goblet the split squats, and then horizontal press, I'm going to do push-ups, and then horizontal pull, I'm going to do I haven't adjusted any of these. I'm going to do a TRX feet elevated row, right? Same thing. I'm going to do either 1, 2, or 3 sets, and then I have the rep range in here, so 8 to 15, okay? And yeah, it's just like that. That's what you do, and boom, you literally do this for each day, and your program is built symmetrically, and it is going to work well. And if you do this stuff with the proper time frames, and again, remember, you can adjust the time frame, the rest periods at certain times, you will be getting a workout. This is literally how I train. I do this and I change it up all the time, right? But this is how I do my program, and I am sweating, and I'm getting benefits, and I'm, getting stronger and getting faster and all those things, right? And it's easy for you because it's already balanced symmetrically. And again, you put in your, your finishers here. So now, since we're not going to know what a lot of these exercises are, if you want to find the videos to them, you just scroll down to the exercise list, okay? And you see that I have explosive lifts, knee dominant lifts, all these things. And all these exercises are like hyperlinked to a certain exercise, okay? So, for instance, if I wanted to come here and do like 2 med ball push-up. I don't know if this is going to, so it showed up for you guys. It goes to my boy John, this is my colleague right here, doing 2 medicine ball push-ups, right? So if you want to find what the exercises look like, you just go to that exercise list and you look at the Zen runner right here doing his thing, okay? Cool. So as you can see, I've been hammering away at these, but over at this section, I need to hyperlink these ones, and I will. It'll all be done for you guys once we upload this. But if this from here to here was from 9 a.m. to today, to like right before this. Okay, another cool thing I put in this program is I provide you guys with a blank workout card of the exact same thing. because a lot of you maybe don't want to do power exercises. You are a strength-based athlete, so you want to just go in here and put certain things in there and manipulate it the way that you want to, right? So it's the exact same template, and you can build your own program however you want, okay? Again, this is nice because it's balanced and symmetrical, but if you're a strength-based athlete and you want to do like back squats and stuff first for the heavy reps, then you're completely fine. This is going to be very beneficial for you too. And again, if you just wanted to use this to build your thing, you could still go back to this exercise list and then pick and prod those things in here. Again, the reason why I'm doing this is, oh, that's not supposed to be there, but that will be fixed at the uploaded version. So I hope that all makes sense. So now, this is, again, I can't underestimate how powerful this is for you guys. I've never given this thing away for free. I've sold this for a very expensive amount of money because you can always progressively overload and change with this. You can change the complexity of the exercises from going from that top to bottom. You could literally do the same rep set scheme each week, and then like every 3 weeks change up the exercise to be a more complex one, okay? And then if you want, you could change the set rep scheme. You have the ability to do it. And then if you wanted to manipulate it and make it your own somehow, you have the ability to do that too. Also, if you want to add exercises in here, if I'm here and I know of another exercise, boom, that's literally added in my list now. Like if I come back here, this whatever it was called will be all the way at the bottom. So you can literally add exercises in there as you go. So it's awesome, and I literally, trainers would kill for this. If you do a program like this, you are doing a program better than 99% of the people at your gym. I promise you that. This is a mixture of Mike Boyle, Gray Cook, Lee Taft, and your boy Ramon Sodano. I just want to put myself in the same category as those guys. All right, so coming back to our slideshow, and we're literally got one more slide before questions. What I want to talk about real quickly, and again, this is one of those nuances that a lot of people don't necessarily need to know, but there's different things called macrocycles, mesocycles, and microcycles. A macrocycle engulfs your entire program. It's usually thought about a year in length, okay? This is difficult to establish with many of my personal training clients, but it's typical for athletes, okay? But if you know if you have a year-long goal, then you're going to have a macrocycle that is a year long, and then within that macrocycle, you'll have 3 to 4 main chunks, which are your 3 to 4 main mesocycles, and maybe one's focused on strength, one's focused on hypertrophy, one's focused on power, and one's focused on endurance, right? You could break them up like that. They could be focused on mobility, stability, however you want to break those up, and then within each one of those microcycles or mesocycles is a microcycle, which is a 3 to 4 week chunk of time. So when you are doing a microcycle, that's typically what is happening on that template that I gave you, okay? And when you make that template, you could literally have it go for like 3 to 4 weeks before you change something up, or you could even go to 6 weeks depending on where you're at, but then you are going to want to change it up. So what I would suggest that you do is you get a good idea of what you want to do in a year, and then just put concepts on your mesocycles, and then every 4 to 6 weeks or 3 to 6 weeks, change up what's in that 4-day split and make it a little bit harder for you, and then continue to go on with that, or have it pertain more to whatever mesocycle that you're in.